Welcome back to another episode of Music is My Mantra. Today we have the very special guest. Please meet Susanna Stokes. Susanna has served two combat tours in Afghanistan as a Marine Corps officer. She experienced a spiritual awakening that changed her life forever on duty. Since then, she's dedicated her life as an energy priestess and embodied consciousness guide. She serves dozens of people one-on-one and through group ceremonies, guiding them in their own spiritual awakening process. She has co-founded the House of Embodied Metamorphosis, a 508c1a faith-based organization that utilizes the metamorphosis method and our community cultivated strand of psilocybin, known as the Trinity, to facilitate powerful personal transformations through retreats and coaching programs. She has authored and generated a comprehensive research study on existing research of psychedelics and their capacity to create individual and collective change. She is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and speaks Mandarin, Chinese, and Spanish, all in service to creating a more peaceful and connected world. Welcome, Susanna, to the show.
It's wonderful to meet you and be here with you, Courtney. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So, you have such an interesting story. I want to first start off on your military experience. So, can you tell us a little bit about those years and maybe even, going in what brought you to the military?
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the most sort of I have a word that wants to come
Mm,
and it hasn't come yet. But essentially the journey to go from who we think we are based
mm,
on the external mirroring feedback environment around us that's constantly saying this is who you should be is really what led me into the military. And
mm,
through that process, I then discovered who I truly am and
mm,
remembered who I am. And it took me some time. It took me a good 30 years to begin to tap into that person. But what led me originally to the military, and I remember hearing myself say this, people were like, well, why did you join? Well, because my father was in the Marine Corps and all the men in my family were in the military. And I remember thinking, that's my answer. It's not really me.
yeah.
It's all of these other people. And so that's what drew me there was the influence of my family lineage, the drive to serve in some
Mm.
way, which was authentic to me. But the way that that expressed was seeing the men around me serve in their ways. And I assumed that that must be the way that I should serve too.
Well, and sometimes you just don't know until you try something, right? So,
You don't know until you know.
yeah. And so, did you go right after college or before? I know lots of people take different paths when they're entering
Yeah, so I attended the Naval Academy, which is a service academy. It's a military
in Annapolis.
school in Annapolis.
Okay.
Yeah. And that school is a feeder for the military, and you have to join as a commitment on the other side of your schooling and of your college degree.
Mm,
So I knew when I was about 12 years old that I wanted to join the Marine Corps. Actually, I was about 4 when I knew I wanted to join the Marine Corps, 12 when I figured out that there was such a thing as the Naval Academy.
mm,
And I knew that it would also put a lot less pressure on my family system financially if I wanted to go to a school that would be paid for by the government.
yeah.
And so there was that piece. There was the desire to be a good steward of our family system, and
Hmm.
there was the desire to serve. And then there was also the knowing that I wanted to be a warrior and I wanted to be trained as a leader. And so
Mm.
all of that drove me to go to the Naval Academy and then ultimately join the Marine Corps out of the Naval Academy.
Yeah, the Marines are no joke.
No joke. There is very real mission with very real challenges, and
Mm,
there is a strong energy, seriousness about of devotion to a cause, whether right or wrong.
Yeah. And so I know we talked a little bit in our pre-call, like when you were in active service, you were involved in music and you played or a part of the like church band or right? Like
I mean, music has
yeah.
been a part of my life and has been like running in not even in the background, but
Mm,
running as my soundtrack
mm,
for my entire life. I feel like it's important to even talk about the origins of it before I
yeah.
get singing in the church band in Afghanistan, because what
Mhm,
led me there was so much so much time spent listening to and being surrounded by music. Growing
mm,
up, both of my parents loved listening to music. I
yeah.
remember Sundays we would be opera days and classical days. So in our
Oh,
house,
cool.
I'd wake up on Sunday mornings and there'd be opera, The Marriage of Figaro or Carmen,
Oh,
playing out of
wow.
our boombox in our house. And so that just opera would fill the house. And of course,
That's
at that
cool.
time when I was young, I was like, oh, what is this? I
Yeah.
didn't fully get it. But it instilled in me an appreciation
Mm,
for classical and opera. And so then growing up, I was in choir from the very beginning, from the very start of my elementary school,
mm,
essentially. And I was in chorus. And then when I got to the Naval Academy, I was in musicals and I was
yeah.
in the Glee Club there. And that's a very cool experience because at the Naval Academy in the Glee Club,
Hmm.
you get opportunities that are unbelievable. Like we
Mm,
sang at President Obama's inaugural concert,
that is really
and
cool.
yeah, got to sing backup for Beyonce singing America the Beautiful. And
Wild.
yeah, and we had an impromptu like sing along with Stevie Wonder outside of the bus. Like just
That's so
wild,
cool.
yeah, just wild, wild experiences of singing and song.
Yeah.
And so that, I held on to music, and music has really been a medicine for me my
Mm,
entire life. And while I was in Afghanistan in my first deployment, I actually, excuse me, it was my second deployment. My second deployment, I had a staff job, so that meant I wasn't working around the clock. In my first deployment, I was working a shift job, so it was like 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. and then 12
okay.
a.m. to 12 p.m. kind of thing. And so I couldn't really do much other than
Mm,
that for
yeah,
six
that's
months.
half
Yeah,
the day. That's a lot.
it takes up your time, right?
Yeah.
But then in my second deployment, I had more of a regular daytime kind of 9 to 5 job. So I was able to do other things like join the choir and join the
Mm,
band. And there was a band that sang the worship service for the Protestant worship service
hmm.
on bass. And so, to be honest, at that time, I was falling far away from the Christian church. I was going through a period of disillusionment, but I thought, well, the only thing that really gives me any sanity is singing.
Yeah.
And I don't really care what I'm singing about. I don't care if I'm singing to God or to talk about Christianity or hymns. Like, it
Mm,
doesn't matter to me. I just need to sing. And so that's what led me there. Yeah.
that's incredible story. Definitely thank you for sharing that context too. I can relate to growing up with music, you know, from a very early age, having a music teacher in church teach us, how to sing on vowels and that sort of thing. And I just thought it was like the coolest. And yeah, I mean, even in my teenage years, I would go to church to sing with the band. And I felt like that was kind of my mom's way of getting me
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And, I think I don't know, when I was younger, I really just didn't have too much of a connection with God because as a teenager, I think lots of things are changing, and I just saw my parents divorce and the effect that they were having on me being caught in the middle of it. I didn't really have much perspective at the time, so definitely have shifted in that way. But that must have been a really interesting place of survival for you at that time, then to be singing. in the church band. I mean, especially in deployment, I feel like that would have been unlike anything a civilian could really understand. I have some family that's also in the military, but of course, I've never been in the military myself. So, yeah, can you share a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, it's interesting because that was a very intense deployment. Both of my deployments were
Mm,
intense. And I would say the first one, music wasn't as much a part of it,
mm,
other than in the movies I was watching, and I'd be listening to some music, but I feel like I lost the music, right? A
mm,
little bit of that American Pie kind of story, right?
mm.
Like the day the
Yeah,
music died
sounds very.
was, yeah, was my first deployment. And so music left my life in a really big way. And I felt incredibly depressed in
Yeah.
the first deployment because I felt isolated and alone, and our base was attacked. And
Mm,
so there was a lot of fear
yeah.
on that deployment. And then the second deployment was when I met the man who has co-created a child with me.
Mm,
And there was still darkness in that. I mean, we were both married to other people and we fell in love in the
mm.
middle of war. So there was a
Wow.
lot of tension. And interestingly, we fell in love with each other. And music was the way that we connected. He was a musician, especially in college, and was a guitar player. So I learned
Mm,
he was teaching me guitar and we were singing together a little bit, and our love kind of grew through that connection. And then I knew that I had to do this second deployment differently than the other one. I couldn't stay silent and just
yeah.
sit in my pain in the way that I did the first one. So I
Yeah.
needed to move something through my voice. And I think that's why my leader of my unit,
Mm-hmm.
he was active in the church. He was very Christian at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had encouraged me, well, why don't you just, come to church? And then they figured out I could sing and they were like, well, why don't you join the band?
That's
And I was
awesome.
like, I don't think I believe in any of this anymore, but I'll join. And that was the beginning of the whole disillusionment, my entire disillusionment around Christianity, around faith, around what I'd grown up being taught.
Mm,
And music facilitated sort of the breakdown of my reality. It
mm,
was right there during that whole experience. And when I think about the soundtracks of my life at different times,
yeah.
at that moment in that deployment, I was listening to Lana Del Rey's album. I forget, it's like America. It was her most famous album that came
Okay.
out.
Is that the one that's like blue jeans?
Yeah,
So jeans
it
teen.
has, the song about California and
Okay.
all of those. I can't remember the exact album name, but
Mm-hmm.
it was all about, unrequited love and
Mm.
loving an older man and being a mistress and all these things. I mean, it was very much my reality.
Oh, wow.
And I was also listening to Lord, that album, and I just listened to those on repeat over and over and over again. And then singing hymns, like these old hymns in church,
Yeah.
was such an interesting dichotomy of being stuck in these like extremes of I'm
Mm.
in war and I'm listening to this music about heartbreak and sadness, but I am also singing to God.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And you said that that was like the place where this delusionment started for you? Like what, or how did,
How did that happen?
yeah, yeah, because I feel like it almost seems like with all the stress of being in war and stuff, that might be more encouraging than
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to know what,
How that
yeah,
occurred.
yeah.
I would I would say there's a quote or a mantra that, the shaman ask when someone comes to them and they say, I'm sick, I'm sick. The shaman will often ask, well, how often are you dancing? How often are you singing? When did you stop singing? When did you stop dancing? And that's how they start to uncover the origin and the moment of when you lost your spark. And so I would say the disillusionment began in my first deployment
Yeah.
and broke down in my second because I had one moment in my first deployment where I was an officer, so I led a team
Mm,
of individuals, of Marines who were controlling all of the airspace over Helmand Province, Afghanistan, which is the primary battlefield. It was about 23,000 square miles of airspace, a
wow.
lot, the majority of the country.
Yeah.
And we were targeting a man who was on a motorbike who had just implanted an IED, which is an improvised explosive device. And we're watching him drive along and with our drone, right? We're watching it from above.
Mm,
And we're getting ready to drop a missile on him because at that point he was considered to be an enemy because he had buried a bomb
mm,
for, to blow up our troops. And we drop the missile, and all of the guys around me cheer as it explodes on the screen.
mm.
And I remember this moment of cognitive dissonance where I was like, what?
Yeah,
Why are
like by cheering that we just killed somebody.
we just killed somebody? Why
Yeah.
are we cheering for that? And it was almost like, when you make a goal in football, right?
Mm,
People cheered. And I just had this sinking feeling like this is not right. And then
yeah.
there was the moment after where I watched the heat signature of the man, because we had
Heat maps
infrared
and
footage.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, get up and run away.
Wow.
And he'd made it through this whole blast. And that's when I cheered internally. I was like, oh, life, like it it succeeded. And that's when I started to break down the belief that I had been programmed into, which was
Hmm.
that these people are other, they
Mm,
are the enemy, they are evil, and we need to go into this country and annihilate them. Because I started to think and have compassion for that
yeah.
boy. He was probably a boy, probably a teenager, and
Mm,
very likely a farmer's son who was threatened by some of the rebel forces, and or his family was threatened and said, "Hey, if
yeah.
you don't do this, we'll kill your family," or something like that.
Mm,
And then we target him. So the heaviness of that really was like a record scratch for me. And there was a just slowly but surely just a dissolving of like nothing about this makes any sense. And that's
mm,
when the music stopped, I believe. And that's also where we then shifted, where when I, in my second deployment, started to shift into, I don't actually think I believe in any of this. I don't think I
mm.
believe in any of this war stuff, this strategy around war. Why am I here?
Yeah.
And why are we here? Why are we in Afghanistan? What are we looking for? What's
Yeah.
even the point? And so I think that the singing that started to re-enter my life
Hmm.
was this conflict between wanting to believe in God and a higher power, but being
Hmm.
highly disappointed in what I was seeing that higher power do, quote unquote, right? I
Mm.
thought,
Allow.
how could a God that I know let this happen? How
Yeah.
could this be okay on our planet? And I became very, in some ways, nihilistic. And that's when I went into, maybe even a period of adolescence, almost like an adolescent era, where
Mm,
I went back to some of those that angsty kind of
mm.
music, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was like, nothing matters. It's all, maybe there is no God. And I
Mm.
experienced that dissolving for a period of time.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. First of all, that's wild. And I can imagine now there's a little more clear of a picture. It's like, you know, unless you're actually there on the ground and experiencing that, you hear these stories, and even still, it's like, I don't know, why bad things happen. And I think, to pull it back to like my story, I definitely in high school, like just between my parents, the conflict that I saw there, like
Mhm.
that was kind of I remember having similar thoughts, like
Mhm.
why does this happen? Like if it's,
Yeah.
supposed to be a redemption story or something. And now I've been seeing things with a different perspective, but I think that that's just a question that like any person in their right mind would grapple with, right? And
Yeah.
especially when you are like responsible for war. Like that is really like you being forced into, I mean, you weren't forced into it, but essentially I can
Right.
see where like you have a heart and a soul that you want to serve, right? Like it sounds like the reason why you got into that work was because you wanted to serve
Yeah.
and probably didn't consider as a kid like what that actually meant.
Most warriors think it is about this riding in on a white horse and being the white knight and saving all of these poor people who are hurting themselves, and we need to help and we need to serve, and or we need to be protecting the people at home because they can't protect themselves and there's all this danger out there.
Yeah.
But what I began to learn through that process and also through engaging with altered states of consciousness through meditation and plant medicine and other types of deep healing in my process, which is where music arrived again, right?
Mm,
In a lot of the ceremonies I sat in. Then there was a whole different type of music. There was a new world of music that was opened up for me after I went into the depths of this, like, oh man, I went over here to save everybody, but really, I needed to be saved.
mm,
And I needed to completely dissolve what I thought God was and start over from scratch. And in order to do that, I also needed a different frequency of music. Like there was a whole different vibration because music really is the one of the most perfect examples of creative energy coming through vibration, right? Through our ears and then into our body. And if we're, what is it, like 75%, 80% water in our body,
yeah.
and we know the fundamental nature of water changes and the shapes of the cells change based on the vibration that you put into it.
Yeah.
If you play certain music to it, well, then my body is also being impacted in that same way. And
Yeah.
I learned how powerful music could be to then also raise my spirit, raise
Mm,
me from that place of darkness.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
So let's fast forward a little bit. You get discharged. Is that the right term?
Yeah,
You get out of the
I
military.
left.
Okay.
Yeah, it is there is technically you do get discharged,
Okay.
yeah, that but I left the military, yeah. And I didn't retire because I didn't
Mm.
do 20 years, but I was complete with my tour and with my contract. Yeah.
So that second tour, that contract, was that, were you already like was that part of the initial contract or was that like
Yeah,
when,
so
because it sounds like the first deployment you were like, I'm seeing through this already. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Actually, I realized in some way that the Marine Corps was not going to be my long-term
yeah.
place within about 1 month of graduation from the Naval
Wow.
Academy. Maybe 2 months because I took some vacation and then I joined and then I went to our basic training and I had a leader who was misogynistic and really the
Mm.
only true misogynist that I met there or most blatant, we might
Okay.
say.
Yeah.
So I very quickly was like, oh yeah, this is not my place. But
Mm.
the way that contracts work is when you sign up for a number of years.
Mm.
So there's a certain number of years that you have to do as a minimum.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can get out. And because I went to the Naval Academy, I had a contract of 5 years.
Mm.
So I owed 5 years of service for the education that I received. And so that's what I did is I served 5 years. And within that 5 years, the military, the government quite
Hmm.
literally owns you. They
Mm.
own everything about you. And there is no real freedom in that. They
Yeah.
get to send you where they need you. And so you are truly in service and you
Yeah.
are deeply obedient in a lot of ways
Mm.
to the higher power that is the Defense Department. Yeah.
Well, you made it out alive.
I did. I did make it out alive.
Thank
Hallelujah.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
And so did you already have a sense of what you wanted to do? Like what did that look like? Because I'm sure it was a shock coming out of 5 years of intense everything.
Yes. I don't
Yeah.
think I understood how much of a shock it was or how much it
Yeah.
was going to be
Yeah.
until now. I look back on it and I'm like, whoa, that was a shock to my system.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't have much of an idea. I always think I know. let's be real. I'm a very certain kind of individual. So in the moment, I'm always certain of what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
However, how that turns out is always up to the universe and what some might call God
Mm.
and living intelligence. So what happened was, as Madeline Albright sometimes says, she says, what had happened was, and I love that she says that, was that I got out and I assumed that I would then go into some other governmental service. I just assumed that
Mm.
I would kind of continue there. So I applied to a bunch of schools to get my master's. I was going to go back into public policy,
Mm.
maybe become a senator. My parents from a very young age were like, this, you will be the president of the United States. That was the expectation in a very,
Wow.
very serious way.
No pressure at all.
No pressure. That was what
And
I was expected to do.
yeah.
So I assumed I would kind of continue on that path. And the universe took me in a hard left because I got offered a job at Facebook. And that was not in the cards for me originally. I was like, corporate world. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's not what I thought. But there was a really nice salary associated with
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
And there was a really interesting opportunity to work with some cool people that I had not thought about before. And I would get
Mm.
to be in the Bay Area, which is where I wanted to be, which was,
Okay.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
And that was what led me. So it really was like divine intervention in a big
Mm.
way because I actually had a meeting with Sheryl Sandberg, who was at the time the COO of Facebook and a
Wow.
very, very wealthy, very powerful woman.
Yeah.
Took some time out of her schedule to counsel this random captain in the Marine Corps. There were a
That
lot of
is,
things that led up to that moment, but she was
yeah.
like, "Why don't you apply here and come work here?" And I was
Wow.
like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So working there led me into the world of realizing that there was a lot more than just the military. Number
Yeah.
one, I got to
Yeah.
see that. And then in the Bay Area, working with things like plant medicines and psychedelics is a lot more open and
Hmm.
free.
Hmm.
And there is a different culture around it there than other places. It's a little more like stepping back into the 60s there,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So there's a free spirited nature and a creative nature there.
Mm.
And for that period of time, it gave me the freedom I needed, the sort of mental freedom to explore and create in a different way.
Mm.
And I would say during that period of time, I started to get connected to and introduced to electronic music. I
Mm.
had not really listened to that at all.
Yeah.
Um, and started to actually go and play in clubs, in at festivals, like listen to all different types of music.
Yeah. When you
And
say
I had not
play,
really done
do you
that
mean like
before.
perform?
More like
Yeah.
just like the
Play,
act of play,
dance
right? Just
and
play.
run around. Yeah.
Yeah, because actually, one thing I skipped over, I was in a show choir growing up that was known to be a really quite a professional show choir. And so
Cool.
all of my play
Mm.
growing up as a gymnast, in chorus, in show choir, in musicals, all of that was performance and it
Yeah.
was for other people. It was
Mm.
for, I'm going to, put on a smile and perform for you.
Yeah.
And
Very
my
like structured,
yes,
perfectionist kind of goals. Yeah.
yes, and expectations around how you would hit the notes and how you
Mm.
would sing in combination with other voices and what you would sing and what you would play and or how you would act in all of those containers.
Yeah.
And I think being in the corporate world and in the Bay Area and exploring this world of festivals and things like
Mm.
that, it was just, well, why don't you just be who you want to be and just
Mm.
play around and wear funny clothes just for the sake of it and dress up and sing badly and
Yeah.
dance badly and, do whatever you want. Be as playful and sloppy and filthy as you want to be. Yeah.
Wow. So, what kind of work were you doing at Facebook?
I was doing communications and culture was one of
Hmm.
my jobs. So I helped to create the onboarding process, actually a whole onboarding tool that
Mm.
now Facebook uses for all their employees.
Okay.
That was a cool job. But
Yeah.
I worked a lot also on veterans initiatives, and that
Mm.
was more volunteer work. But I led our veterans resource group, which grew from about 200 people to 2,000 people while I was
Wow.
leading it.
Hmm.
And then I also did a lot of operations work with a couple of teams. I was essentially like a chief of staff. When I first got there, I was working a little closer to Sheryl Sandberg's team. I was the executive assistant to her director of communications. So we were doing a lot of like Sheryl Sandberg's like voice in the world. And of course
Okay.
she did Lean In, the Lean In movement, which is all about, the empowerment of women in the workplace. And so I got to work on some initiatives that were very, very cool.
Yeah.
And I got to be close to a platform and the leaders, like the top leaders of that platform, even Mark Zuckerberg,
Yeah.
to be able to see up close and personal, how were decisions being made? What were the motivating factors? What were we prioritizing? And
That is really
were we
fascinating.
involving, was the music of life entering this community? Sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah. And you could see that through the
Yeah,
decision-making processes.
definitely.
Wow.
Definitely.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Power is a hungry, hungry beast if you get too much of it in the physical world and you
Yeah.
don't remember that there's a lot of spiritual power that each of us has.
It sounds like you got to really get in touch with that spiritual side for yourself. So would you say that that also was through Facebook or just more so through the Bay Area community that you were exploring?
Once I began to sit in ceremonies with plant medicines,
Hmm.
that reactivated my connection with God. That's really where I found it again, was through those experiences. And then I had several spiritual awakening moments with plant medicines
Hmm.
that led me directly back and were like, hey, Susanna, all this stuff that you're doing in the egoic world and the physical world at Facebook and the military, all these ways that you think you're helping,
Yeah.
they're building you, but they are not your path. They're not your truth. Like you need to come back to work that you can do barefoot, work that you can do where you're singing, work
Mm.
that you can do where you're dancing. Like you can't do any of those natural skills and those natural desires in these professional corporate spaces.
Yeah.
It's just not built into the systems.
Mm.
So I had one experience where I was meditating on top of a mountain
Mm.
and big hill, maybe not like a mountain. I don't want people to get the wrong. I'm like at the, climb
Up in the
thousands of feet.
Andes. Yeah.
No, but I was in California
You had a
and
nice vista.
yes, I
Yeah.
did. A gorgeous vista over some wine country. And I received a big download in my body, basically went into a vortex of energy and
Mm.
and I dissolved into nothingness and saw the perfection of my spirit being I was shown how perfect my lineage was, my bloodlines on both
Mm.
sides. And they were like all the way back to this ancestor and this ancestor. Every single one of these people came together to then create you, and you
Mm.
are exactly perfect for the job that you're here to do, which is to heal. And you have exactly the right talents and skills to create that healing for yourself and for others. And that's when I would say then the disillusionment around the corporate world happened. And I started to realize that I couldn't stay there either. Yeah. So
And so let's jump ahead a little bit. I've been just so into your story, so I kind of lost track of time for a minute.
that's
But
okay.
so since then, you've been really into studying psychedelics, the effect on communities and individuals, doing one-on-one sessions. Tell us a little bit about that work and maybe something that surprised you that as you continue down this new path.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything is surprising me. Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot in this conversation around the disillusionment
Hmm.
and then the rebuilding of what God is. And I would say that process and my deconstructing my belief system and then reconstructing it with the
Mm,
support of psychedelics and psychedelic ceremony, that has been probably the most surprising thing
mm,
because I grew up Methodist. My grandfather was a Methodist bishop, a very holy, very dear man who was also an academic. So he was more open-minded than your average
mm,
Methodist bishop. And in that church system, there are very specific beliefs around what God looks, feels like.
mhm,
And I often got this image of a man with a white beard who is up there, kind of puppeteering everything
mm,
and creating everything. And that
mhm,
for me was my construct of what God was. And over time, I realized that it was much more of an essence. It was much more of a living field of intelligence. It was this almost like the if I were a fish and it would be the water around me, right?
mm,
It would be this essence of God that is connecting me to all things and that we are all part of it and it is part of me and I am directly connected.
mm.
So that realization and the deconstruction and the reconstruction
Yeah,
into a whole different belief system that also still believes in a lot of the fundamental things that I grew up with, but just comes at it from a different vantage point. I think that was by far the most. And also just being connected, right? Just knowing
yeah.
that you and I are connected. We are not separate. That was huge for
Mm.
my heart.
I guess I'm going back to your journey. I want to
Bring
learn
it
more
back.
about. Okay, well, so you're at Facebook. You left at some point.
Yep, yep.
Um, did you already start working with people? Like, when did you
Yeah,
feel the call to, help
yeah, to
others?
plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did. I left Facebook and I actually went for a period of time for about 8 months to work at a startup. And
Okay.
the leader there was so toxic that
Mm.
it was so plain to see how
Yeah.
it was not my place, that the corporate world essentially chewed me up and spit me out. And God was
Startups
like,
can be rough. Yeah.
yeah, you don't belong here. Go away. And that was right around 2019. And then we hit 2020. And I had already started to put out there in the world that I felt like I was a good space holder for people. And I've always been a natural mothering energy. And so people started to come to me unprompted and be like, I feel like you should take me on a journey, on my first journey with psychedelics. And I was like, me? Are you sure about that? And others noticed this talent in me before I noticed it in myself, really. And so then I began to work with several official ceremonial practitioners
Mhm.
in 2019 and then 2020. And that guided me in the framework of what it looks like to hold space in a psychedelic container. And
Yeah.
that gave me the template basically for it. And then people just started to come. I mean, friends,
Mm.
colleagues, even family members eventually were some of the first people that I served in ceremony.
Mm.
And then what really drove it home was that my sister she had experienced a trauma when she
Mm.
went to college, and it drove her into a psychosis. And
Oh,
she was
wow.
diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and was
Oof.
given over 22 different medications, some of which
Mm.
were wildly overprescribed. And she became an entirely different person.
Wow.
That then caused her to want to commit suicide and kill herself. And
Mm.
it got really dark for a period of time witnessing her journey.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to find something that will
Mm.
make sure that she does not die. My sister, I cannot live the rest of this life with my sister dying. That's just not okay.
Yeah.
And so when I began to serve these ceremonies, I realized that this was the answer. This is what could save her
Mm.
life potentially. And so we did two ceremonies, and after the second one, she said, I choose life and I
Wow.
am not going to harm myself ever again. And
Wow. So she's doing good now.
oh, she is, yeah, she's a whole
Wow.
different version of herself. I mean, all of us have our continued processes. So she has a
Hmm.
continued process in some ways, but she's got chickens and dogs and a
Mm.
wonderful boyfriend and a beautiful house. And I mean, she
Awesome.
has an ideal life now. because
Wow.
of
That's amazing.
yeah, these that really showed me and illustrated, demonstrated to me the power that these plants and this method of going into altered state of consciousness and basically reprogramming ourselves
Mm,
to consciously evolve out of these self-destructive tendencies, and that
yeah.
it has the potential of saving lives like that too.
Is that sort of where the metamorphosis, I don't know if system is the right
The
word. Okay.
sequence,
Yeah.
she was definitely part of it, and the healing of her was part of it. We had our very first group retreat in 2021, and after that, we had 9 people there. And after it, it was so potent for so many people. I mean, we had revelations on revelations on revelations.
Mm,
People were like, you can't stop doing this. You have to keep going. And that's where it was born from. It grew from there and
mm,
has snowballed into realizing that we are actually here to replace big pharma.
mm.
That's what we're on a mission to do,
Wow.
is to create the new paradigm of what we know to be pharmaceuticals, which is something completely, the new paradigm is something completely different. It involves community, it involves nurturing, it involves integration, somatic experience, it involves music.
Hmm.
All of that is important.
Is that also someone that you've worked with your mentors on, or is that you leading that initiative, or both?
Metamorphosis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am the founder and owner, and I have an amazing team of about 20 people who
Wow.
are working with me and with our organization to co-create and build. And we have 2 organizations within the ecosystem, and she'll grow. She'll actually have more companies within, but one is a for-profit called Metamorphosis Ventures, and
Hmm.
that houses our initiation program and also our microdosing resources around how to microdose properly.
Mm,
And then we have House of Metamorphosis, which is our 508c1a. As you mentioned in the introduction,
hmm.
that is where we can grow our medicine, which we have a psilocybin that we
Mm,
cultivate. And
wow.
we are now including others like Iboga and San Pedro because we really truly believe in the power of these, not only in macro form, but also
Mm,
in micro form. But we do other things as well. It's while I say plant medicine is sort of the fire that we gather around, but that is not the only piece, right? That there's the community aspect, which is
yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
And then there are integrative techniques that we are incorporating into the organization so that therapists and practitioners and clients and their
Mm.
clients can be well supported in their psychedelic journey and their exploration. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a topic, you see more states talking about it in their legislation. And so it's interesting
Mhm.
how that seems to be shifting.
Yes, the narrative is shifting in a very big way. I mean, I wrote you mentioned entheogenerated in the intro of my master's research.
Yeah.
I did a brief history, and basically, the war on drugs really created a level of propaganda that said
Mm,
these things are so bad, they're going to make you jump off out of a window and, hurt yourself, and
right.
integrates into your DNA and it changes you forever. And I'm like, well, yes, it actually does that, but for the better. It helps you heal, it helps you grow, it helps you see things beyond just these 5 senses
Mm,
because we have so much more. And as women, we know that. This is, I think, that what music brings us. Music brings us this understanding of something beyond the senses, right? It's
mm,
beyond hearing, it's even beyond feeling.
yeah.
There is a heartfelt sense of connection with the music itself and with all things when we allow ourselves to be fully immersed in music.
Mm,
So that's why I think it's so beautiful that we get to talk about this
yeah.
topic in particular
Yeah.
because, and of course, the way that psychedelics and music weave together is astounding. I mean, you can literally become music if you're working with psychedelics.
Oh man, yeah. You're making me think of all of these experiences that I've had in my past. But yeah, I mean, I think just music in general, it's like I have experienced that before where it does feel like it breaks down a wall, and I think there's so much potential for learning in that sense.
Yeah.
So when you are hosting community events and that sort of thing, I would imagine that you're listening to ceremonial music. Are there other ways that you integrate music into your community
Yeah.
aside from that?
I mean, music is medicine for sure. And I didn't understand that before.
Mm,
And now that I've been working with plant medicine, I understand that there's plant medicine, there's earth-based medicines, there's animal medicines, and then there's all these different frequency medicines. And one of the
mm,
frequency medicines is music. And so one of our medicines really is sound. And so in all of our containers, whether it be a healing container or like we have an event coming up in October called MetaFest, even in our playful containers, we
hmm
offer music as medicines. So we always bring in big artists in some way, some magnificent musician who is
Yeah.
there to drop some sound frequency into
hmm
this space and allow you to really receive it into your body. And that's how we work with it is by finding those who are doing groundbreaking things with
Mm,
sound and with sound frequency. And I just see music on a whole new level these
yeah.
days,
Oh,
beyond just like something that kind of, matches my energy. I'm like, oh, I can completely change my energy with music and with sound.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you for sharing, the way that I've loved this conversation so much because I think when I ask every guest on the show if there's a song or multiple songs that have saved or changed your life in some way.
Mm.
And often, like I did two solo episodes about me talking about the songs that have impacted my life. So
Amazing.
I can't imagine like everyone just to have one simple answer, but it's
Yeah.
been cool to sort of
Yeah.
walk through your story with that in mind. And, today where you are is, like you said in the very beginning, a very different person than 5, 10 years ago, even. So, and we've talked a lot about different songs that have set with you, but I do have to ask, is there a song? Maybe it's something that you've been enjoying recently, but it could be something that stands out as well, a song that has really saved your life or changed your life in some way.
Yes, many as you pointed out, and there are different ones in different moments, but I'll speak to the one that's been very impactful lately, recently. I birthed my son in November.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And he was a beautiful, magnificent little being. And he
Mm,
also completely changed my life from the inside out in every possible way, more than I even understood motherhood would do. A big shedding for me. And the
mm,
song that has been with me for the last few years, actually, and it's an entire album. So I'll recommend that after
cool.
this, everyone listen to the whole album. It is the album called The Gift by
Mm,
Beyonce. And it is the Lion King album, actually, that she did that also is the soundtrack to Black is King, which is the music video kind of series of videos that's on Disney Plus.
okay.
And there's imagery in that that's amazing. And then there's,
Mm,
of course, the Lion King, the new Lion King, which is
yeah.
excellent. And the one song that stands out is Bigger to
Mm,
me, which opens with, if you feel insignificant, you better think again. You're part of something way bigger. And then it just goes on and on and on and on
mm,
around the importance of you, of how
mm,
important you are. You're part of something much bigger.
yeah.
You are part of this interconnected web of power.
Mm,
And don't forget how precious and important you are.
thank you for that. Yeah, gosh, she's such an incredible singer.
Oh man. I mean, she's
Next level.
she's my inspiration in many ways. I mean, including style wise. I'm like, I
Mm.
want every one of those bodysuits. But her music, especially in that album,
Mm,
but I listen to Beyonce regularly, and especially her newer albums because her voice dropped and she just
mm,
has this power to
yeah,
it because she's really stepped into her feminine power. So, and there's all sorts of, opinions about her in many, many ways, but that's to be expected from any powerful woman.
yeah,
And so I admire her ability to stand in her voice and to
yeah.
sing it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think in a lot of ways, she's, regardless of the opinions, right? I think she's still stayed pretty classy, and I really I admire her for that. It's like I think when you're in the spotlight, it could go a lot of ways, and I think she's done a really good job. She's stayed relevant, but also stayed out of it. So it's
Very much.
yeah,
Yeah, she has stayed relevant, but stayed out of it. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. It's pretty cool to see. So
It's incredible to see the women who are rising in the world right now. So yeah,
yeah,
and she is one of them. So
amazing.
cool.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks for having
I,
me.
yeah, no, thank you for this whole conversation. Be sure to put all of the information that you shared with me and all of your links in this podcast episode. So if people want to get in touch with you and learn more, please do. And is there anything that we didn't get a chance to cover or anything last thoughts you wanted to share?
No, I feel like we covered so much ground
We
and
really
talked
did.
about so much of my musical influence in my life.
Yeah,
And it's been such a pleasure to even the insights that I've had around how music has impacted me and my whole body system. I mean, it really has been medicine for my soul. And you're inspired, even since I knew that were doing this, I've started to really tune into the music that I'm listening to. I'm like,
cool.
okay, always want to be highly intentional with
Yeah.
with the vibrations that I'm putting through my ears. So thank you for being an inspiration in that way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it can affect us in ways that we're not even really aware of, right? So absolutely. Yeah.
Yep, most definitely.
Well,
Mm.
thank you again for today. And for all of our listeners out there, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. If you've gotten anything out of today's conversation, I would love to hear your insights. Let us know what was helpful. Let us know if you have any questions. You can comment on the episode or write me directly at Courtney@musicismymantra.com. And until next week's episode, stay healthy, wealthy, and wise.